Welcome, guys, to Mob Tales with me, Nick Christophers. Um, Please like, share, and subscribe. We definitely appreciate that. Unfortunately, today I'm not in my office, and I'm doing the show incognito, so to speak. And today we have a very interesting guest, Paul Manning, who was an undercover operative in Canada, and he has some very interesting stories. Infiltrated Hell's Angels and the Ontario faction of the mob. So this should be an interesting interview. Paul, thank you very much for coming on.
More than welcome, Nick.
Awesome. Well, like I was saying in my intro, so people can know a little bit more about you, Paul was a undercover officer in Ontario, Canada, if I'm correct, and you infiltrated some heavy hitters, the Musitano family and the Papaya family in Canada, and also the Hells Angels. And you kind of did both at the same time somehow, which is nuts. So if you could please give us a little bit of a background, in first, of course, how you got involved in law enforcement to begin with.
Yeah, one of those things. I always wanted to be a cop since I was a kid. Didn't work out. I first applied when I was 16. Didn't work out. Too young, far too young. Ended up applying for the military. I went in the military police for a few years. That's how I found myself working undercover. Worked covert operations for the Special Investigation Branch, and then went to the Met, which is the Central London Police Service. And then when I was over there, I did some undercover work for Professional Standards, and got an offer I couldn't refuse. Job in Canada. They wanted me to come in and work undercover straight away. It was just supposed to be a couple of small premises, problem premises that were political nightmares for the mayor. And it was also supposed to be a lot of what we call test purchase buy busts, where I buy drugs off somebody and then they arrest them straight away. But we did it a different way. We weren't arresting people straight away. We were just trying to ID and walk them off. And we were pretty successful. In fact, we were very successful at the first stages. And that's what led to the second stage. But yeah, career police officer, nearly 30 years.
Was that prior to coming to Canada, or after, or together?
I started in '93. I finished. I was fired. I finished in 2022 with Hamilton Police in Canada. So about 29 years. I came over to Canada 2005.
Okay, so how did you get involved with, or was offered an assignment where you had to infiltrate the Hells Angels and the Italian mob, the Musitano and the Papaya families? How did that happen? How were you immersed?
The Hells Angels was an accident. We were so successful in the test purchase and the buy busts. We were getting behind on the paperwork. We were doing 30 a week. We just weren't getting refused. I think it had something to do with the fact that I had previous experiences of an undercover, and the accent threw a lot of people. And I relied on that a lot moving forward. When we sat down for a briefing one day, it was suggested that I go and try and get into that Italian Portuguese community that's prevalent down in James Street in the north end of Hamilton. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't even realize there was a mafia presence there. It's quite a historic one. It goes all the way back to Capone. So I said, yeah, of course I can. And that's what we did. We did it very successfully. We were the first party I was invited to, the Hells Angels attended, and that's how I got into the Hells Angels as well at the same time. And that was a crazy night.
Yeah, I can imagine. So how did you, like you said, you did both. You were kind of infiltrating Hells Angels, the biker gang, and yet you were also infiltrating the Italian mob. I'm amazed by this, because I don't know how you were able to play off two different personalities, basically.
Well, I didn't. That's the thing. I just played one personality with everybody. We were buying off the gangbangers at the same time, the Bloods. We were into other organized crime groups. We just found ourselves in a position where we're into everybody, and everybody wants to do business, and that was fine by me. My personality is my personality. I'm not Italian. I'm not a biker. I'm not any of these things. But everyone wanted to do business, and it was a really really nice operation. It would have been. It's a shame that it was compromised like it was. It would have been a beautiful takedown.
Yeah.
I'm
going to get to that eventually.
Yeah, I figured. we have thousands of offences on hundreds of people throughout the city.
Well, when you were doing this kind of work, like I mentioned earlier, you were involved with the Musitano family and the Papaglia family. John Papaglia, I think, was the boss back then.
No, he was dead. He died. No, I think
he was already dead. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yes. The name still lived on, but he was gone.
Oh, yeah. Everyone talks about him. They gave me a pair of his sunglasses, which I walked around with for a year. He was very highly thought of. No, I used to associate with Frankie, who was a made guy, and Rocky. Rocky wasn't a made guy, but he was the younger brother.
Well, in reference to that project that you worked on, did it what's the word I'm looking for here? Did it develop informers, or did it equal arrests? Was there any major bust with the
nothing at all? No, nothing at all. So we found ourselves in a position where there was a massive compromise, and like you said, we discussed that. But as soon as I heard of the compromise, I knew everything was done. I knew nobody was getting charged, nobody was going to jail, and we were investigating offences from simple handling stolen goods right up the way to conspiracy to commit murder. It was even if we did take on any informants, I won't tell you. That's not my place. But there were some loose lips. Let's just say that Omerta didn't really fit this particular operation. A lot of people wanted to talk out, and they're probably people that should get the most shut.
How long were you under in that operation?
About 40 months. That's all.
40 months. Okay, yeah. That's not that long, but okay, it's long still.
No.
You know, when it came to, I mean, I've talked to more than one guy that have done this kind of work.
Yeah.
And I've always wondered how you were able to sustain your own the kind of person you really are, and kind of separate that when you're hanging out with guys that live a criminal life every day of the week. But I mean, how were you able? How is somebody like you able to maintain your sanity and your humanity when you're hanging out with guys like this?
I didn't have the kindness of upbringing, I suppose. I mean, you've got to imagine that most of my friends are either dead or in jail. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to become a police officer and get the hell away. And that's why I joined the army as fast as I could. I wanted to get out because that was my path. So I suppose, I don't know how to put it. I fit in that lifestyle. I know that lifestyle. I've lived that lifestyle. So it was pretty easy for me to do. And when you get people that have, especially police officers that have got a bit of a background, with crime or come from crime families, etc., and they're usually frowned upon. They're usually the best cops. They're usually the easiest to talk to. They're usually the smartest. They see things that the cops don't see. So I suppose that put me in a position where this wasn't unusual for me. It was. I hear other UCs. I've watched podcasts with other UCs where they go, well, it felt uncomfortable because that's not really me. I was a football player at school. I did this. I did that. No, that's where I fit. I fit there. So I was okay with it.
Oh, okay. Was there any guy, especially in the with the Italians or the Portuguese, I didn't even know there was a Portuguese crew to begin with.
No, there
But
isn't. That's the community. The community's Portuguese.
that's the community. Okay,
Yeah,
I misunderstood.
yeah.
Okay. When it came to the Musitano family or the Papaya family, was there anybody that you developed a relationship with? I got close to.
A few people. Yeah, a few people. I've spoke to some since. Everything's good. This is not. Nobody went to jail. Nobody's going to jail. And these guys, can I swear? Yeah, these guys don't give a fuck. They play a game. They're brought up to play a game. They're brought up to assume everyone's either an informant or a cop. And if somebody gets one past them, they're very respectful about it. They're not at all aggressive. When you hear of UCs getting contracts taken out on them, yeah, they took contracts out on me, or at least that was what was said. Looking back on it, I doubt that I was being told the truth by the police. I don't think there was any threat. I think it's a game they play. You spoke to wise guys, I'm sure. But they know the game. If they go to jail, they know it's on them. It's not on anybody else. The only time they'd hit somebody or they'd whack somebody is if it had stopped them from going to jail. They take that risk. Otherwise, you know what? They're going to do 2 years. They do 2 years. What are they going to get for killing an undercover cop? 25 life? It's not worth it. So they're pretty. None of these guys are morons. They're not moronic. They're not stupid. And they live by a rule. Like the Hells Angels live by a certain set of rules, and you've got to respect that.
Well, you came from England because they gave you the nickname the Englishman. If
They
I'm
did,
correct.
yeah.
And coming from England, and I know there's a underworld in England as well, the underbelly of England, so to speak. Have you ever dealt with them over there, or no?
Yeah, you know what? Briefly, the Richardsons. I met a couple of the old style gangsters that used to work with the Krays when I worked undercover. Interesting characters. Interesting.
I'm sure.
Oh yeah. But yeah, it's different over there. You get a robbery crew over in Canada or the US. They'll work with anybody. They'll work with anybody. They just want the money. Whereas in the UK, you'll get 4-man ASUs, active service units. These guys will only work with each other for the rest of their lives. They won't take anyone new on. So it's really hard to get a UC into those kind of crews. But you've got gang families in London that command respect, and they're dangerous. They really are. But they're all dangerous. Any idiot can pull a trigger. It's as simple as that. So we did a bit of work on the Essex Boys, which were a crew down in Essex. They all got murdered in the end. They all got shot with shotguns. But yeah, most of my stuff in the UK was either on police officers, intelligence for the military, or it was low-level drug boys.
Okay.
So used to do child porn and things like that as well, but it's something I tried to stay away from because I don't have the temperament to deal with that.
Would you say I'm sure this is a very easy answer, but in comparison to the organized crime element where you worked in Canada, compared to England, is there? I mean, is it still prevalent in England, or is it still existent as it is in Canada?
Yeah, of course, yeah. But the problem with England is it's an island. It's very difficult to move firearms, drugs, but they still manage to do it. There's certain routes they take to do that. You've got a huge border here. You've got numerous ways, and I won't go into them, how to get stuff across the border. And you've got a number of organized crime groups. That's all they've done. And it's historic. It goes back to Capone. The guys, the grandparents of the guys I used to work undercover on used to work directly for Capone back in the day, and they moved booze into the US when you had prohibition. So effectively, by having prohibition, we set up these organized crime groups, and we put them in a position where they started to make money off booze. And then when we took it away by making it legal again, they had to fill that void somehow. And a criminal's going to commit crime. That's what they do. Um,
Yeah.
I don't look down on them. I don't look up on them. That's their nature. It's as simple as that.
Are they still, since you left that operation, and everything that happened after, which we're going to get into, are they still prevalent up there? Are they still active?
The mob, the
Yeah.
Hells Angels, the Hells Angels most
Well,
certainly, and
well,
the
Hell's
mafia.
Angels, I know.
The
Yeah.
mafia, hell yes. I mean, so from my research, what I've discovered is um, most of the Golden Horseshoe, which is the area from Niagara Falls Police Department over to say Ottawa, you've got 12 million people there in that 150 kilometers, and there's nothing to do in Canada. It's not like New York where there's stuff to do. I think it's Steve Martin that said it the best. He said Toronto's just like New York, apart from there's nothing to do. You've got all these people and they're very bored, and there's a lot of money to be made: gambling, sex, drugs, and it's all run by the Sardo crime family out of Buffalo. And they're run by the is it Gambinos, the Bananos? Can't remember. I think it's the Banana crime family that does.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're run for the. So effectively, the New York family, our New York family, is in charge of the Golden Horseshoe. And one of the bosses up in Canada is definitely the underboss for the Toronto crime family as well. So they're prevalent. They're making money hand over fist, and it'll never go away.
What, is it just the Italian groups? Or there? Because I mean, I'm Greek myself,
Right.
and I knew there were Greek elements in Toronto and Montreal.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever encountered that at all.
Not the Greeks. The Albanians I worked on. The Russians I worked on. The East Indians I worked on. The Albanians they're not what they're made out to be, but they're just as stupid as everyone else when it comes to firearms. And I think we took them down in. I worked for the CFSEU, the Combined Forces Special Enforcement Unit, which is just an organised crime unit, and we took them down on the way to do a hit in a place called Brampton, just north of Toronto. And they were all Americans, so the old American passport holders, even though they were Albanian, they spoke Albanian, and they were there on green cards up in Canada doing the business. So there's a lot of money to be made in Canada for these crime groups, and I think we found ourselves in a position back in 2007 through to 2012 where we weren't managing it as well as we could. But now you've got the RCMP, CFSEU units, you've got the North Toronto detachment. All these units are really good units. They know what they're doing. And I think they've got a good grip on everything that's going on intelligence-wise. So sooner or later you'll start to see takedowns again. But yeah, every community, every culture's got its own crime group, whether it be the Greeks or the Russians or the Albanians. But the Italians are the most famous for it because the media and the movies.
Yeah, they get the most press.
They do.
That's true.
They do.
Yeah. Well, going to your life, to what happened after the operation, and the discovery that you were compromised during that time, and I know you and your wife, I believe, were going to be were in turn going to sue. How did you? When did you find out that you were compromised? That this whole thing went to shit?
We had we lived in a place called Burlington, and we had officers turn up at the front door. I got a phone call off the handler. He said, where the fuck are you? I went, home. And he went, stay there. Got officers coming round. And it was apparently a laptop that had been lost by an intelligence officer, but it had my home address on it, my real name on it, my undercover name, and my undercover address on it, which I didn't even have on the same paperwork. And I knew at that point this was done. And I'll be honest with you, I was sort of relieved because this operation was a mess from the start. It was just a convoluted screw up. And it was down to unprofessionalism on the part of Hamilton. And then it turns out it was down to corruption. We were sold out. And just this week, I've actually got evidence that this happened. But that's something I need to keep to myself for the time being. But yeah, I can now prove that this happened. So it's been 20 years or 18 years, and they refuse to comment or make. you know what? If a cop does something wrong, everybody does something wrong. If a cop does something wrong, tell everybody. Don't hide it. Don't pretend it's okay. It's not. We put our trust in these people, and they do a very difficult job. You've no idea until you actually ride around in a cruiser. But I think there should be more accountability when officers do something wrong. It was always a case of because I was a supervisor in the UK. If somebody did something, if they made a mistake of the heart, so they thought they were doing the right thing, but they did the wrong thing, we can look after that. It is what it is. It's a hard job. But if it was a mistake of the head, where they intentionally did something wrong, or they hurt somebody, or they stole something that wasn't theirs, then sorry, you're on your own. You deserve to be fired and go to jail. But that's just my personal opinion.
Well, to make the audience understand how this actually occurred and why it occurred. I mean, why would they risk such a delicate operation like yours? And what was the bottom line?
Well,
Really.
I think with hindsight, when we've actually sat down and we've gone through all the paperwork and all the discovery and disclosure that we got, and then I've been given paperwork by other officers that weren't supposed to hand over stuff. It's clear to me that perhaps this was the best option moving forward for the amount of corruption that we found in Hamilton Police Service. And it wasn't just selected to Hamilton Police. I mean, you've got Niagara Region next door, which is just as corrupt. We found numerous issues there. We found officers driving drugs across the border. I mean, you're talking about a police service where two officers got into a fight, one shoots another one, and nobody goes to court for it, and nobody goes to jail for it. Oh, Niagara's a mess. Oh, yeah. But Hamilton's probably worse. Now, when you get, so say I make a complaint, say, listen, I was compromised here. They will take that complaint, they will give it to Niagara to investigate. Now, if a Niagara officer makes a complaint, they will take that complaint and they give it to Hamilton to investigate. So you've got two buddies that are investigating each other and always finding that they didn't do anything wrong. So I think the compromise suited them, and I don't think they were that bothered, to be honest. I think there's a lot of corruption. We think the chief was involved. We know that some of the intelligence officers were involved. We know that people were involved since that have been arrested and they've gone to jail for the same police officers. So I just think it put them in a position where they could turn around and say, you know what, this is done. It's not our fault. It's the state police or the provincial police's fault. Let's put this to bed. Let's everyone go their separate ways. And that's when my mistreatment really started, because they asked me to leave and I didn't do anything wrong. I did the job they asked me to. But I think they sort of knew that in the background I was investigating these matters, and that's why they wanted me gone.
So were you saying the Niagara, if I'm correct, saying it correctly, and Hamilton are corrupt? So would you say that means they were on the table with the wise guys and the Hells Angels, that they were being, what I mean by corrupt, like they were getting payoffs?
Well, 100%. You've got an officer called Rosowski. He went to jail for 12 years. He was taking money. You've got an officer called Rick Wills. He was an inspector, but he was in charge of our operation, even though I never met him. He went to jail for 12 months. I mean, you've got to look at it this way. I find out about 30, 40 officers around the Golden Horseshoe dealing drugs, and I put a report together and give it to intelligence. And they get, I think they seized $3.5 million worth of meth off that intelligence report. But all the officers that were dealing all got written warnings and sent on the way. And then you've got an officer dealing drugs, bringing them across the border at, not Rainbow Bridge, Peace Bridge, down in Fort Erie. So driving into the US, buying steroids, driving them back through $500,000 at a time. Okay. When he gets stopped by CBSA, he gives his badge, and CBSA wave him on. So I phoned Niagara Police and I told them what was going on, and nothing happened. So I phoned them again, told them what was going on, nothing happened. I phoned CBSA, so the Border Services, nothing happened. So I phoned the Yanks, I phoned Homeland Security, and they took him down. They took him down hard on the bridge. That was a Niagara officer. And then it just, I mean, a lot of people have reached out to me because I've become this central point for advice. And I get a domestic violence victim who's married to a biker. She reaches out, says, "Listen, I reported him for domestic violence." I'm like, "Okay, fine." And she says, "He turned up an hour later and he showed me the police report, a photograph of it." So then I'm back down with Niagara. That was Niagara Regional Police as well. I'm back down with them, talking to their intelligence officers in the coffee shop, saying, "Listen, this is what you've got, somebody taking photographs of reports and selling them to the bikers." And they turn around and said, "We can't monitor it. We can't look at it." So it's a flawed system. It really is. You need a centralized system that can be monitored by either the RCMP or some other unit that just monitors police officers. And especially when it comes to these covert long-term infiltrations, because they're so dangerous. This is not a case of, if they'd have found out I was a police officer, they would have shook my hand, patted me on the back, and let me go. I think we all know what would have happened, or at least we can assume what would have happened. And I was fine with that because that's the responsibility I took on. So
you're saying that it's there is a need for like an oversight committee, so to speak, for all these.
I think if you centralize everything, because Hamilton police reports or the OPP police reports, the provincial police reports, if you log in as a police officer, it shows you've logged in. With Niagara Region, it doesn't show anything. So you can look at any report you want and nobody knows you've looked at it. So that's why they're taking photographs and selling the photographs to the bad guys. So I sat there with two intelligence sergeants, one I knew, really good guy, and I told them this, and they're shrugging their shoulders going, "You can't do anything about it. It is what it is." Well, when you say it is what it is, that means you're getting fucked. And that's what's happening. It's the truth.
Well, since your experience on basically both sides of the tracks, basically.
Yeah.
I know it sounds like an odd question, but do you think the Wise guys and the Hells Angels guys have a little more honor than the police department you just mentioned?
No. You get one bad cop and it makes the news and it rolls in the news for the next 2 years while he goes through court, and you've still got 700 cops at the station going out protecting people, saving babies, pulling people from burning vehicles. You've got really good officers there, and we're sort of at a precipice, Nick, where I think if we don't do something fast that assists the officers that we've got, both psychologically, physically, I think we're going to start to see a lot of officers leave the police service in the US, in the UK, in Canada, because you've got people walking up to police officers and sticking a camera in their face and going, "This is my First Amendment right to video you." Well, you know what? I don't disagree with the First Amendment right, but I think it's trying to cause anxiety for the sake of causing it so you can get clicks on your TikTok accounts. When if you go up to that officer and go, "Listen, thanks for what you do," it makes his day, it makes your day. It's a much better way for society to move forward. And officers are getting sick of what they've got to put up with, and it's not what I had to put up with when I was a young police officer. And I promise you, when I first started, we got away with a little more than we should have done. But you know what? Put your hands in your pockets. Don't raise your hands to police officers. It's as simple as that. So I think the respect's gone, and I think as soon as the respect completely goes, I think that's when we start to lose all our good officers. It's not the shit officers that leave; it's the good officers that leave, and that's what we need to recognise. And we've got a real problem coming for North America. You've got Florida departments up in New York at the moment, but they were there last week, trying to recruit New Yorkers to move down to Florida and become cops here. So,
wow. Yeah, it says a lot. So basically, regardless of your unfortunate experience with Hamilton and Niagara, like you said, with what happened with your operation, you don't have any kind of prejudice or any kind of animosity towards the law enforcement, even though you went through that?
No, I mean, for me, I won't say no. Senior management and senior management teams that cover up this crap, yes, there is animosity there because they don't need to. They can come out whenever they want. They can. There's a sheriff down here called Grady Judd. You know him?
No.
All right. He speaks his mind, okay, but he never says anything particularly wrong. But they did a sting recently where they put a police officer, female police officer, into a hotel room. They put an advert out, and she pretended to be a prostitute. And they caught a deputy chief from another police service, and he drove down an unmarked car, and he turned up drunk, and Grady Judd went on the TV and with his photograph and told everybody what he'd done. Everybody. Because he's not scared to tell people that some police officers are bad. Well, some police officers are bad. Until senior management starts turning around and they want to attack the whistleblower. So I got fired for going public with certain information, which by the rules is quite right. What they did was completely legal. Okay. However, the people that I gave the information about are still police officers. And the things I disclosed were a lot worse than disclosing the material in the first place. But that's the spin. So rather than make it sound like I catch you, you're my partner, I catch you dealing drugs, and I go and tell them, and they do nothing about it. So I go to the papers and I tell the papers publish a story. Well, I can't do that. That's against policy and procedure. So they charge me under the Police Service Act and they fire me. But you're still on the job. It's intentional. It's to show every police officer that if you go public with something, they will come after you. They will.
Wow.
Okay. But that's not isolated to me. That's almost every police, especially female police officers. Yeah.
That was my next question. So it's not isolated.
No. When female police officers report acts that are crimes, especially sexual assaults, they will go after them. They'll make sure that the female knows that she's in the wrong for speaking out. And wow. I'm seeing that a lot.
That's sad. That's sad, actually.
It is. And I think when we start to change the way management works and the way our computer systems work, officers are going to be happier. They're not going to play out. They're not going to act out at traffic stops. You call an officer a name now, they're on top of you and they're punching you, they're tasering you, and they're giving you $3 million worth of taxpayers' money. Where if they're in a good mood and they're not getting grief at work and they're not getting grief at home, and you can say whatever you want, it doesn't matter to them. They'll give you your ticket and they'll move on. So I think the way we treat our officers is despicable at the moment, but that's just my personal opinion.
Oh, well, getting back really quick to your work, your operation with the Italians in Hamilton, Ontario, in that area. If you can share with us some of your experience with them. Like, what did you exactly, like, what kind of infiltration were you doing? Going into, if you were looking into gambling, prostitution, what was your focus?
So the idea was that this is the best thing about it. I had a clear remit. I could do whatever I wanted. The idea was to get as many offences on as many people as possible. However, the goal for the undercover operation, so the project goal, there was two brothers called the Musitanos. There was Pat and Ange. And they were responsible for killing Johnny Palia back in the day, back in 98. I think it was May 29th, 1998. So they murdered him, or they had him murdered by a gentleman called Kenneth Murdoch killed them. He killed 3 people for them in succession. So they were getting out of jail. The idea was that I'd insert myself a year before, make sure that I was in a position so that when they got out of jail, we could put them straight back in if they were up to no good. And the operation was compromised a week before they got out of jail, which is, you could call coincidence, you could call it something else. But I just had a remit to do whatever I wanted. And Nick, I just went all over the place buying drugs, buying stolen gear. We went to the casino. We laundered money. Just you name it, we did it. Protection rackets, everything, everything.
So how the question is what I think a lot of people were curious about is how does somebody like yourself, like you said, you're not Italian, you're not from that world, so to speak. How were you able to ingratiate yourself with these kind of guys?
It was down to luck. A lot of intelligence, a lot of intelligence, but you've got people like Joe Pistone, who spent 6 years working his way into a certain family. Well, so he spends 3 years working into a certain family. I think there's a certain compromise, not that he's FBI, but they're worried that he's moving too fast in that family. He worries he's going to get killed, so he moves to another family, which is fine. But that was a long-term infiltration. I think he was 3-4 years on the street before he actually made contact with made guys. I walked into a pub one night knowing there was a party, and just partied. And the mafia were there, the Hells Angels. It was the 15th anniversary of somebody Hells Angels dying. So he died in, I want to say 1990, came off his bike. And then 2005, this was this party. It was that night. And they were partying. There was cocaine, there was Hells Angels, there was mobsters, there was captains, there was bosses, there was the president of the Hells Angels was there. There was city councillors there. There was off-duty police officers there. It was a mess.
And you were able to just go in and
party on down. Party on down.
Wow, look at that.
Got drunk, jumped on the table, took my top off, started dancing like I've been there forever. And I looked like shit the next day. And it all fit. Everything fit perfectly. So what I did was I rented an apartment above the party. And I rented it from these guys. So they approached me. I sat there with the newspaper, circling apartment in front of them. And they approached me and they said, listen, do you want a place? I'm like, yeah, I need a place. And that's how I effectively started the infiltration. And then when I heard about the party, I thought, perfect, let's go.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
It was, you know what, they're pretty, I know it sounds awful because they do bad things, but they're pretty cool guys. And the Hells Angels especially, when you get to party with them. But they're all dead now. And I mean, the Mustanos were murdered and a couple of the Hells Angels were murdered and all these people are gone.
Well, from what I understand in my own research and just talking to guys, the bikers seem to be a little more family oriented, meaning they protect their men a lot more than the wise guys do. Did you see that at all?
Yeah, once they're patched, that's it. Once they're patched, that's it. They'll look after each other. You sort of get the feeling with the Italians that there's always that air of betrayal. A biker does a deal and you're in on that deal, you're getting your cut. With the mafia, I sort of feel like you're probably not getting what was promised. Even if you're another mobster, I think they're always looking for that extra buck. They're all about cash. They're all about making money. They're about making money and denying the mob exists. That's it. They're just seriously. I turn up with a lot of cigarette lighters in a box. I show a captain these cigarette lighters. He's like, "How much do you want for them?" I said, $48. Can't remember what it was exactly. $48. So I'll take them. And he takes the box, pays me my $48, walks across the street to the store. It was called the Star, something or other. He walks across the street to the store. He walks in. He comes back out with $50 and he shows me. He goes, $2. And he was made up. They could be in a room with furniture made out of cash, throwing money around, having a shower with cash, and they could see $1 outside in an open car and they go and break into it. It's not about the money. It was never about the money. It's about the lifestyle.
Wow, that's crazy.
The money helps.
That's an interesting analogy there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, they're all about the money.
Well, if somebody wanted to check more about you, I think you had a book out, right? If I'm
I
correct.
got a book out. Yeah, it's doing pretty well considering I wrote it.
What's the title of the book?
1078.
1078. That's right. Yes. Okay. Now, 1078 means what exactly?
That's a police officer called for assistance when the shit's hitting the fan. You call a 1078, but it changes from place to place. Like in Florida, I think it's a 1033 or something like that. But in Canada,
okay.
1078 is call for assistance, and that's effectively what the book's about.
Okay. And where can people find? Obviously, Amazon.
It's only on Amazon at the moment. Yeah, Amazon.com, Amazon.co.uk, and .ca.
All right. Well, if people wanted to reach out to you, where would they be able to touch base with you?
Instagram, Twitter. I'm on everything. I check it regularly.
And you have a website too, right?
Yeah, but it's just for the book. I don't really monitor it. I don't look at the emails. So
yeah, at least you're honest. That's pretty funny.
Listen, that's why I'm poor. I'm an honest cop.
Well, Paul, listen, thanks a lot for coming on.
Nick,
I really
it's been great.
It's a good show, a lot of fun. I wish you luck, and hopefully we'll touch base again soon.
I'm sure we will. Take care.
Thanks a lot, Paul.
All right, bye.